Hi, welcome to Crafted Sweetly. I'm Diana. Thanks so much for being here. In this video, I'd like to share with you some additional tips in using the 180 marker for the book folding. I have done a video in the past when I first started with the 180 marker, and if you have followed my channel for a while, you know that this was the original 180 marker, and it's gone through a few different versions, but the ruler, the marker itself, works the same way. It's just, different material right now and just a little more precision in terms of the measurements here. So this you've seen, you may still have this original one, which works great. Still the same, like I said, same purpose it serves. Then you may have seen this version. So some of you may have different versions, but again, it's going to work the same way. And then my latest versions of the 180 marker are actually plastic. And I have them in two different sizes. One is the white one, and I do have in my Etsy shop, and I can make a note of it in the description box below as well and link to these rulers. They're pretty much the same. One has a slightly different, like the measurements are in slightly different places. It's just a couple different millimeter differences, and then the length of it is, like 1 millimeter longer on one versus the other. And then the slots are slightly, because if I put them on top of each other this way, you can see that one is a little wider. So it'll give you a farther in score line if you need it. But I'll have the links below as well as where the measurements are for each one, so you can decide which one works for you. So I'll start off with giving you some tips in terms of what works best to create an even fold line, because that's some of my viewers have asked for this, so I thought I would share it and hopefully help you in the process. Now, when I use the 180 marker, regardless of which one it is, I will take one of these stylus, and it comes in a set that looks like this. It has a whole bunch of different, these are more for flower forming. If you don't want this, you can get just the stylus, so you don't need to buy these ball ones. But they came in a set, and I found that these work very well. They do have different heads on them, and I found that I don't want the head, it's kind of like the middle one, and I don't think they have measurements on them, but I don't want a head that's super big. I mean, it's relative, it's not that big, but I don't want one that's the largest set, and I don't want the one that's the finest one either, because if it's too big, it's going to leave the score line too thick, and if it's too thin, you can easily pierce through the paper, especially if the page is thinner. So I found that one, like this one had 5 of them in it. This wasn't part of it. That's okay. So it had 5 in it. And the one that I reach for most, I guess, is the middle one. It's this way. So this is the one that I use. This is almost like a pencil, really sharpened pencil. But this is the one that I use to mark my pages. And what I do is, and I'll use this one just so you can see it a little better against the white page. I'm using the book folding stand to hold my pages back. And I have a link below for this as well. But it does help to hold the pages in place as you're working on the rest of the book. If you find that the book slides, you can put one of those drawer liners on here to keep the book from sliding. I do sell this already made, but I also have the stand, just the pattern, or the instructions on how to make it yourself. So if you're handy or know somebody who can create it for you, I do have measurements and tools and instructions to make your own if you're interested in that. Anyway, back to this. So this has a 90-degree angle here, which means you want this to be completely 90 degrees here. You want the 180 marker to hug this perfectly. If it's slightly off, so as you go, if it's, do it this way here. See, now that's not. So if you try to put this here, it's going to be at different places where you're scoring. So you want to make sure that this is completely straight. And what I do is I reach behind the book here and I push the spine forward to make sure that this is completely 90 degrees. And then once it's 90 degrees, I don't push it and then kind of stop and then put this on and mark it, because in the process you're likely going to push this back. Even half a millimeter will make a difference. Once I push this forward and it's perfect, then I put my hand right in the middle of the page here, and this will not move. So no matter how much I push against here, especially once I put the marker on, this will not change. This is still perfectly 90 degrees. So I'll put the marker down and I'm holding it here in order to mark it. Now if you needed to score farther in, so this would work if you're using the first and second scoring lines. And as you know, if you've seen some of my other videos, you have 5 score line possibilities depending on your project. But I hold this part of the ruler to score the line here. And I do hold this in the same position every time. So I'm not holding it sometimes this way, sometimes this way, sometimes, you know, because it's going to give you different score lines. So make sure you pick something that's comfortable for you and you always score the same way along there. And then once you score it, so let me just score this one. You really only need to do it once, you know, if you apply enough pressure. And then you've got a perfect line right there. Okay? And then this can go back here. Now, what I have found doing many books is once I push this forward, if I have the ruler down, and again, this is not moving anywhere, once I have my marker ruler down, then I score this, and I lift this off, but I'm still putting pressure on the book here. So instead of lifting my hand and then losing this 90 degree and having to go through the process of having to press the back of the spine for every single page, this is still perfectly fine. I've scored this page, I lift this, I put the ruler down, and now I'm applying pressure on the ruler to hold the book at 90, and I move this up. I'm not concerned that this is not behind the rod here to hold the page, because it's just a page. I haven't done anything, I just scored it. And then I can do this, and I'll lift it and do the same thing. Now you can kind of hold the page in the palm of your hand, kind of like this if you need to, but you can easily, like I said, just lift your hand and go to the next page. So you can easily do about, you know, 5 to 10 pages this way without having to push the spine forward. Now, if you need to score something a little farther in, then what you need to do is, once you've moved the line, so let me move this out of the way so you can see it. Once I've have this at 90 degrees and I put the ruler down, let's say I need to score here, so obviously I can't hold my finger in front of it, then I will hold it here, and I am applying fairly, you know, like the pressure on it is pretty tight, just to make sure, or, you know, hard pressure to make sure that the book doesn't shift, and then I can score there or here. But more often than not, you'll probably end up using line number 2 or 3 to score, depending on how far in you want your score line. Now, what happens if once you get, let's say you've scored all these pages and you're down to, you know, right there. Pushing the book forward, you're gonna try and put this on, and it's not going to work because this does have a lip. I couldn't have this made any thinner because then it would be too flexible and it wouldn't really work. So what I did was, it's still the same thickness, but to be able to mark these last set of pages that are, you know, together, they're thinner than what this allows. What I do is I put 2 tiles like this. I'll put them at the bottom, right below the last pages. And I want them flush with the page here, because that will give me height to it. Now at this point I can push the spine forward. So I've arranged this to make sure that my tiles are kind of pretending to be more pages in the book. Once I push the spine forward, the tile is acting as if it's another set of probably 20 pages, and that will allow me to place my marker on top and then finish scoring these last pages that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So that's really helpful to do. You know, putting this underneath here for the last pages and applying pressure to the top of the marker so that it doesn't shift, and you don't have to keep pushing the spine forward for every page. You can do 5 to 10 pages, and you can actually score the entire book before you start folding the 180s in. So once you've, you know, you don't want to score and fold the entire book, because that's going to make it hard for you to mark the pages. But you can certainly score the entire book and then fold the 180, probably 10 pages at a time, mark them, cut them, and fold them, and then move on to the next set of 10. But once you've scored the entire book, then it's easy to kind of fold back the 180, like I said, about 10 pages or so at a time. You know, and then you do end up with a nice, like, if you can see that this completely went right on top of the other page. But the key, which is super, super important, is you don't want this to shift. So the more pages you can do in that same position of the book, once you push forward, the more even your fold is going to be. So I hope that cleared up some of the questions, and, you know, with viewers watching and asking about how they can get the edge of the book more even. And the same way, when I use the Incra ruler, I use the same thing. I put the tiles underneath here so that I have enough height, because this is kind of the same concept of having something to hug the book to make sure that you're even with it. So, and I love the Incra ruler for that reason, because, you know, besides the fact that it has holes so you don't have to kind of measure, it's easy to score your markings. So if you have any more questions, please comment below. You can join my Facebook group and, you know, ask any questions you have over there as well. We have a lot of members in the group who are very helpful if you do have questions. So I do have both available. And again, just make sure, you know, you can look at the description below or on Etsy, and it'll tell you the difference, which measurements for each one. Not a big deal with either one. You know, it's really more color preference, or, you know, if you want a little bit wider, then you do the white one. If you have any questions, again, comment below. Would love to see your projects in my Facebook group. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.